all of your support through all of this. All right, so good afternoon and welcome to our final workshop of this conference. This one is called Protecting Youth by Building the Safety Net. We hope you've enjoyed the workshops and you've taken away some new information that will be helpful to you in your work with youth. Again, my name is Bridgette Nugent. I serve as the Deputy Director of Tompkins County Youth Services, as well as the Safe Harbor Coordinator for the county. And really, the best part of my job is coordinating with so many wonderful youth serving professionals in the county, such as those that we have here today on our panel. I'm honored to moderate this panel of a select few representatives of some of these wonderful organizations. We're very fortunate in this county to have so many resources for our youth. So really, again, these are just a select few of them. We look forward to hearing from each of them on the work they're doing to connect with youth and, in effect, filling some of those holes in the jar we've heard referenced many times over the last couple of days. So I did want to give them all an opportunity to kind of quickly wave. So we have Shelley Lester from Rural Youth Services at Cornell Cooperative Extension. We have Devin Ritz from Planned Parenthood of Greater New York. Mona Smiley from the Learning Web Youth Outreach Program. Jen Assels from our TST BOCES Youth Development Program. So thank you all for joining us. So just kind of quick housekeeping. As Christy mentioned, your video and sound are turned off, but we do encourage you to put any questions that you have throughout kind of our discussion in the chat. We'll be monitoring those, and we would really like to hear from folks any of your questions or comments directed towards our panelists. I have a few questions that I've kind of come up with, but we'd really like to hear from you all and kind of, just what would be most helpful to you to hear from some of our youth providers. And just to frame a little bit of this discussion, I think it's been mentioned many times how we as a community can create opportunities for youth to have healthy connections with adults and their peers, and the ways that we can meet some of these developmental needs of youth or these vulnerabilities that have been highlighted in previous discussions. We know that vulnerabilities are what offenders or exploiters are very skilled at exploiting. And the exploiters also rely on the fact that we as adults feel that we might be helpless to address them. I hear very often from youth serving professionals that they don't know what to do to prevent or respond to youth exploitation, which I think is a valid feeling. But I hope we can highlight that the work that you and many others are already doing are meeting those needs. You're filling those jars. So that's really what I want to kind of remember today as we talk through many of these wonderful programs that we have in our county. So with that, I will probably call on each of you to just start with a basic introduction. Who are you? What your role is? What program are you representing? And any sort of information that you can share on your program. Maybe what youth you serve, who's eligible, and what are some of the youth development activities that you all do. So with that, I would like to probably start with Shelley, if that's okay, from our Rural Youth Services program. Go for it.
Now I can go. I had my mute button on because there were people in the office, but they have since left. It's great to be here today. I am with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Tompkins County, as Bridgette mentioned, within the 4-H Youth Development area for Rural Youth Services. And Rural Youth Services is a program that's been in existence for well over 20 years. It came to Cooperative Extension in 1995, and it's a collaborative between the county, who provides funding through Tompkins County Youth Services, and municipalities throughout Tompkins County who match that funding. And then they also help direct the needs of their community specifically. So we have educated program educators who specialize in positive youth development, and they have programs throughout the county in those specific municipalities. Our targeted audience is generally middle school. We do have high school programs in Trumansburg and an elementary camp in Groton, but mostly we target middle school youth. Programs generally take place after school, during school breaks, in the summer, and sometimes on weekends. And all of our programs are based on the principles of positive youth development, so that every aspect of programming has some type of component of positive youth development in it. And let's see. Next. I got on a roll, Bridget. Where should I go after that?
No, that's okay. That's great. Is there any information? So do you serve all youth? All youth are eligible to participate in these programs?
So all youth are eligible, but we do have some cross enrollment, but we have programs in Danby, Dryden, Enfield, Groton, Lansing, and Trumansburg, as well as the Joint Youth Commission represents the town of Ithaca, the village of Lansing, the village of Cuga Heights, and the town of Caroline. So we try to have youth who are specific to those municipalities enroll in those programs, because that is their taxpayer dollars. And part of the appeal is having programs right in their own community for them to have a community connection. And it also illustrates the support of the community has, that they provide these programs. Each community also has a community council or a youth commission, comprised of many volunteers and liaisons for the town board, village boards, the school, and at-large members. And they all help to guide the programming that they like to see in their specific community through needs assessments and various fundraising activities sometimes as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Deli.
You're welcome.
Let's go with Mona from the Learning Web.
Hi, good afternoon. I'll start with a population that we serve are 16 to 24-year-olds that are homeless, that a lot of them 18 and over utilize the shelter. A lot of our participants also do something called couch surfing. So our connection with the positive youth development is allowing access to adult mentors, through our apprenticeship program, which right now, because of COVID, is kind of slim pickings. But what we do is we make that connection. They have a case manager here with our program, but then they also have the ability to connect with a mentor out in the community that is working in a field or organization that they're interested in and want to get some skills in. That relationship can look a whole bunch of different ways. It develops as the participant would like it. So that's just another adult person that they can turn to for guidance or for help or for assistance, other than their case managers here at Youth Outreach. We have a couple other programs under the Learning Web's umbrella that also works with positive youth development. But I mean, I guess I'm just here to tell you what we're doing here at Youth Outreach. The relationships that are built with their case managers are probably the most important that we have right now. So we have myself and then two other case managers, Anthony and Nakia, that are on staff here. And what I'm finding, or what I've seen over my time here and in different roles as a staff member here, is that some of the relationships that I built are really, really key to these young people. And when they hit a tough spot or when they have some questioning behaviors or things like that, they're able to come to us. So that's one of the things that, we've been trained. We've done numerous trainings on youth development and how to build those relationships. So.
Great. Thank you, Mona.
You're welcome.
Let's hear from Devin from Planned Parenthood.
Hey, y'all. So Devin from Planned Parenthood. I am the transgender and non-binary patient navigator here. I also co-facilitate our LGBTQ youth group and provide technical assistance training around specifically for people who are serving youth and healthcare providers on helping to create more thoughtful and inclusive spaces for LGBTQ youth and patients. So just a little bit about what Planned Parenthood can offer youth in our community. It's low cost or no cost confidential services for people of all ages in New York State. Everybody has the right to confidential reproductive health care. So those are things like birth control, STI testing and treatment, emergency contraception, abortion services, options counseling, infection checks. Those are things that we can help with, like getting Medicaid coverage, things like that, which again is available to people of all ages in New York State. We have 2 youth programs that I would love to tell you all about. We have an LGBTQ youth group that's available to youth ages 12 to 20 years old. And that is mostly a social group. We used to meet weekly. Now we're doing monthly because Zoom is a lot and we didn't want to add to the fatigue of screen time for sure. So we're meeting monthly with our youth and youth group, again, just social drop-in space. People can come as they feel comfortable and want to. And then our other youth program is Teen Council, which is for youth in 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, or rising freshmen. And that is peer-led sex ed. So that is all through the year, still happening over Zoom. But they meet each week and are taught accurate and evidence-based sex education that they then teach in the middle schools and high schools throughout Tompkins County. So I think one of the questions was just, how does this support the youth in our community? I think having access to confidential and accessible reproductive health care in an unbiased and patient-empowered setting really helps youth make decisions that we believe that they can make, as long as they have the tools and the trust, and the right context to make those informed decisions. And with Teen Council, we have found, and I think probably all of us remember learning about sex from friends growing up. With Teen Council, we're providing the teens information that they can share with their peers that's accurate and fact-based, and kind of demystify some of the mystery and shame associated with sex and sexuality and consent. And then for youth group, it's really about, any youth is able to come. It is about and centered around LGBTQ identity. So we want to create a space that people don't feel like they need to educate anybody about their identity. We want to make sure that they feel like they can express their gender however they want to, their sexual orientation however they want to. And sometimes that looks like trying new pronouns and names. But something that has been really great about youth group for the past almost decade now is we've been able to connect youth with programs like Open Doors through Family and Children's, youth advocates at the Advocacy Center, support groups at the Mental Health Association. So really being another, I think Mona said it, just being another adult in their lives that can connect them to the other incredible resources that we have in town.
Great, thank you, Devin. And Jen.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Astles. I'm the coordinator of the Youth Development Program at TST BOCES. We're somewhat unique in comparison to the other programs you've heard, in that we're a school-based program. So through TST BOCES, we actually have access to youth in grades K through 12 throughout our region. So we work in all of the Tompkins County schools to some degree. We have an amazing team of 3 youth development service specialists who work directly with youth. They go into the schools and facilitate social skill building discussion groups. We support districts in their implementation of Second Step, which is a social emotional learning curriculum. We provide a lot of prevention education as well, K through 12, so related to alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. What else do we do? On the flip side of that, on kind of the other side, I primarily am supporting the educators in our region, and I do a lot of professional development related to building developmental relationships, working with folks around crisis de-escalation. I'm also the Regional Dignity Act coordinator, so I am here as a resource not only for our districts, but also for caregivers and for students if they have questions related to the Dignity Act. For those of you who aren't familiar, that's the New York state law that prevents bullying, harassment, and discrimination in our schools. So I work really hard to train the folks in our region as to how to best implement the Dignity Act and create a caring school climate. That was a lot of information. Again, we work with students K-12. We're also in the school districts. So we're very fortunate this year, even in unique circumstances, that our service specialists are able to be in district with our students when we're not able to access students in person. We're doing a lot with Zoom and Google Hangouts and email and trying new forms of communication with our students. We're moving all of our elementary prevention lessons to virtual options. So we're all learning a lot of new technology. But for us, what's most important is that we're providing youth with that caring third-party adult who can act as a safe person for them to share. We're active members of the Community Coalition for Healthy Youth, but we also have really good relationships with the agencies throughout Tompkins County, so that we know if we have a student who's struggling or if a district calls, we can refer them so that our students are getting the support that they need in order to be successful. I think that's everything.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone. Those are great introductions. I think, Jen, kind of your last point, just in terms of switching to virtual and using some of the tools that we're all facing, leads really nicely into what my next question was going to be, which is
hey, anytime I can segue.
I know we talked beforehand, but I would like to hear, and this time we'll kind of let folks just chime in, and we'll kind of see how that goes rather than call on you. But if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit on how your program has adapted to our current, pandemics, multiple pandemics, right? So whether it's COVID-19, racism, racial inequity, class inequity, what are some of the ways in which your program has had to adapt, and maybe some of the challenges that you've kind of overcome or that you may still be facing in terms of our current moment? So like I said, I'll open it up, and if I kind of can see who kind of wants to go first, and I can call on you. But anyone want to start with the response to that question? Jen, sure, go ahead.
Okay. I kind of led into it unknowingly. So it's been a really unique situation for us, specifically within the school district, as the school is trying to manage how they're now implementing education both in person and virtually and half and half. We've really had to work to determine different ways that we can still connect with our students in that meaningful way. So we've found that we've kind of made a shift when we are in person and doing discussion groups and things like that. We tend to be more scheduled and have activities and things like that. And now we've really shifted for the time being to really just being that person that is there for students. They know that they can catch us on Hangouts throughout the day. We set up specific kind of like office times so that students always know when they can connect with us, just to make sure that they're okay. We're always very open to discussing. It's stressful for us as adults. So imagine being a young person and everything that they're going through, specifically developmentally for a lot of our students, specifically middle school through high school. It's a really challenging time, and that they don't have access to their friends in the ways that they once did. And so making sure we're also aware of issues like cyberbullying and things like that, which have the potential to increase during this time, and making sure we're getting information out there and connecting with them. We are getting all of our lessons, we're making them virtual, which has been a really fun, exciting process. As far as professional development, I'm also doing a lot of creating a lot of self-paced professional development that folks can do. I'm trying to do I do like 10-minute little mini trainings that I'm sending out once a month. I did one on kind of responding to students who aren't wearing their mask and how we do that in a strength-based way. We're always open and looking for new ways to connect, and we really also let our districts lead in some ways as far as what they need, and then trying to figure out the creative way to be able to meet that need.
Great. Anyone else want to chime in on how you've adapted?
I guess I'll go next.
Sure.
For youth outreach, one of our big carrots was our drop-in center where youth could come anytime the office was open and come into that space. So that has been closed. We did create a very, very smaller version of that where they have access to a computer, a telephone, the microwave. We're going to start getting back into providing snacks or some type of food that they can have. So we'll go back to our Panera Bread donations where that'll be individually packaged. We have cups of soup and water, things that we had available before on a much larger scale will now be available to them on a smaller scale. Access to staff was another big one. So we have a housing program. I didn't mention that earlier, but that's a big, huge carrot that we have. We house 16 to 24-year-olds that are homeless that have been through the coordinated entry process, have been determined eligible for our program. So we house, they have individual apartments. We were doing weekly in apartment visits with them. So we had to get creative on how to still be able to serve them. We did move people in during COVID. We've had people graduate from the program and move into more permanent housing. So our case managers really worked hard and were able to accommodate, moving someone into apartment with very minimal contact so that we all, maintain that social distance. We had to come, like I said, be creative. So Anthony, thank God for him, came up with teaching us how to use Google Duo. So we had to help our participants download or upload apps. We had to provide some of them with the means to do that. So cell phones, phone cards, so that we could stay connected with them. Staff, we helped with PPE supplies for our participants, especially for the ones that were in the housing program, a way of checking in with them to make sure if they had any symptoms or even questions or concerns about COVID-19, making sure that staff was available. There were so many different things that we had to come up with. Our supplies are still available to our participants. So before, when, New York State was on pause, they could reach out to us. They had our cell phone numbers to get a hold of us, and they could call and say, I need diapers, or I need garbage tags, or I need wipes. And this one staff person would come to the office, make the stuff available by either leaving it, at the apartment or meeting them somewhere where they could socially distance and hand off supplies to them. So that was a big, big thing for us, is just to stay connected with these young people and, providing the resources so they could reach us if they needed to.
Great. Fantastic.
Bridget, just as a note, sorry, this is Christy. Thank you for that. There is a question here for Shelley if she's able to join us back. So I just want to flag that when the internet's not being so finicky.
Okay, thanks. We'll make sure to ask her that when she rejoins us. Devin, did you want to add anything to this question?
We fast tracked with the beginning of COVID. We fast tracked our telehealth service. So we are able to see patients via telehealth, new patients or current patients. Again, that's for people of any age. We have been able to help in some cases with getting rides and coordinating rides to the health center. And we're still seeing people every day. And other than that, it's been moving our youth programming entirely online, and making sure our youth know that they can email us. I have a number that's just for them that they can text with anything that comes up if they need help connecting with anybody.
Great. So really all of you have been a really big lift, right? To kind of move your services, maintain connections, ensure youth are getting access to those basic needs that you'd always been providing them before. And we know that there's been what had seemed like insurmountable challenges, but you've all really overcome them, and it should really be applauded. So I think with that, I would like to hear if anyone has any sort of positive stories or a win, if you will, in terms of maybe a connection with a youth that has kind of come out of the last, I guess, since the beginning of the year, this whole situation. We always like to hear some positive stories if anyone has one.
We have quite a few. We're really fortunate. We often joke about our paycheck moments, because those of you in the field know we're not doing this for the money. We're really, it's for us, it's all about young people. And so we worked really hard when we first went into the shutdown to make sure we were still staying connected with our students. Some of our service specialists are working weekly in the school districts and have really connected with students in that way. And so it was really exciting, it kind of tapered off over the summer as anticipated when they went into break. And so it was so excited, and because the moment they were back, they were just like on Hangouts and, wanting to connect and really looking for that. And so it was really exciting to see that we were able to maintain those relationships as we kind of moved through the challenges of last spring and through the summer. And so we're always happy to see that. We're excited about, the positive response that we're getting from districts as far as kids still wanting to make sure that we're there and that we're connected and that the things we're doing seem to be working, which is exciting. I'm sure if my service specialists were here, they would have individual student kind of examples of cool things that happened. But as a whole, we were coming into this year apprehensive and really are feeling much more positive as we move forward, and that we have some key things in place specifically as we move into the winter, which we know will be a challenging time, making sure that our students are still connected and have that important mentor and caring third-party adult in their lives.
I think one of the happy things, or however you want to phrase it, that we had happen, to me, it's a big deal. Our case manager, Anthony, was able to help a family with a newborn get housed they were in the shelter and staying in a hotel, was able to help them connect with all different kinds of community resources to get them into permanent housing with a Section 8 family unification voucher. So that was big because there's just a challenge of looking at apartments, not being able to provide transportation, staying safe. But in the meantime, he's running all over to different agencies, gathering everything that he could so that the parents didn't have to be out there with this new baby during this pandemic and getting it done. So that was a big win for him. I'm gonna say he worked really hard and he was able to get that done. And that just goes to show that the case managers are, even though we're in a pandemic, we're all willing to go the lengths that it takes to get these young people connected to the services, regardless of what's going on around us. So
that's amazing.
About that
that's
one.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other positive kind of wins or stories to share? I don't know, Devin, if you had one or maybe many.
I know last week when we had youth group, there was, we went over time together because they're just excited to see each other, and, just said this is the highlight of my week. So just being able to connect folks from different towns and cities that haven't seen each other in a long time, that are having similar experiences going through school and everything has been really wonderful.
Yeah, it's that connection, right? We know that we all need it. Youth in particular need it. And you've all touched upon that, is how you're able to maintain and foster those connections between caring adults and the youth, but also amongst each other, right? Them and their peers. It's very developmentally important. In addition to meeting some of those basic needs that Mona highlighted, whether it's shelter, food, those basic resources that we all need access to. Great.
Yeah, and I think if I can jump in,
yeah,
there's,
please.
One of the pieces that I find, I'm kind of sitting back here and listening to everybody share what they're doing. And in my brain, the place that I go to is how powerful it is to be able to have youth in our community who may have some more vulnerabilities than others, or don't, just have the natural kind of vulnerabilities of being a teenager, to have people that they can go to that not only they trust, but that are role modeling what healthy communications and interactions can look like with adults, and, you know, expectations and role modeling, that a relationship doesn't have to be based on exchange or based on placing themselves into an unsafe or harmful circumstance. And while not all of our youth have grown up in those spaces, many of them have. And I think we often, one of the things that Bridgette and I talk about, and when we're talking about this panel, is also really thinking about the fact that we often look at youth services, right? We talk about that as a very broad spectrum, right? And some of those are intervention services, but other things we often look at them as recreational or extracurricular, right? Is locally GIAC, when, you know, the budgets were so tight and they were being furloughed, and they offer such tremendously important services and connection for youth and families in our community, and what a huge loss that is for so many people. And you know, when some community members were able to support and have the pool reopen, you know, I think people think about that and they're like, oh, well, it's hot out, and to have access to the pool, and, you know, that's just a nice thing, as opposed to going, no, that's actually a protective thing. That is something so that our youth and our families have spaces that they can use their time, where they can have some space to get out of the house together. And I think that's really the intention of having these conversations, is going, we have to stop looking at youth services as an extra, right? As a nice kind of gravy on it, but as the fact that it is actually protective. And one of the, you know, kind of primary things that we can do to also take pressure off of caregivers from having to be the everything. And so, you know, listening to everyone talk, and I hope Shelley can jump back in, I hear everything from the basics, the you know, housing and food and diapers, that are so paramount to connection over identities that maybe they don't have in other spaces, or their families don't understand and aren't being supportive around, to their physical health, and then their developmental needs within school districts, and you know, how they engage, and how our systems are actually supporting them, and are we doing that effectively as well. So I wanted to, like, I felt the need to jump back in here and just say how much I appreciate you all sharing that, and also make sure that we are starting to reframe how we think about youth services in our communities, and what we need to be doing to support them and support youth. So thank you all for your work on that.
Can I piggyback off of that for just 1 second?
Of course.
Please.
I think what you just said is so important. So much of Dr. James Comer has this great quote that no significant learning happens without a significant relationship. And that's really one of the things that we stress in our program, is that concept of relationship, and building those relationships for our young people. And those things happen, you know, in so many different places. They happen in school, they happen in the community, they happen in you know, with their peers. And so the concept, I think you're so right, of youth services, specifically for our, you know, for our young students, whether anywhere from, you know, birth, but, you know, through high school. So much of what they're specific, I talk specifically about schools because that's the world I live in, but thinking about the fact that they're not just learning how to read and whatever. What they're learning are some really important life skills about how to communicate with one another, how to disagree respectfully, understanding empathy. And for a lot of the students that we work with, it's their home lives aren't always the greatest place. And so we're giving them that opportunity, like you said, to model that behavior, to connect them with those other resources. And so the idea of youth services is something extra is always crazy to me, because to me, that's the pinnacle of what we should be doing, specifically in education. We need to be making sure that we are helping these young people grow to be the most successful individuals that they can be. And success looks different for every student. And so what is it that student needs, and really being able to differentiate that and make sure we're connecting folks. But what it really comes down to is those relationships, and all students need to build those relationships with adults outside of their family. Certainly, you know, caregivers play a huge role, but there's so many things, specifically as teens get older, that they may not be comfortable talking to their person in parental relation with. It may not feel comfortable. And so having that caring third-party adult who can help mentor them, who can be a safe person to share and to ask questions and to give them safe, accurate information is so huge. So I completely agree with you that. And for me, the concept of youth services and what we all do should really be at the forefront versus the idea of an icing on the cake, because that's what's essential in the lives of our young people, all of our young people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for that. I think I'm going to hire you all as lobbyists for some more youth services funding. I couldn't have said it better myself. So I think we're going to try and see if we can get Shelly back on the phone.
Yeah, Shelly, I think you're in here as a phone number attendee. If you unmute yourself, you should be able to talk. I can't get a video to work unless I have a random person on a phone who I just unmuted.
Welcome, if you do.
Yeah. Let me see if I can do this. Yes. So Shelly, if you can figure out how to unmute yourself, I'm not quite sure.
Sometimes it's *6, or yeah, I think, Shelly.
Oh, there it is.
You.
You're
Shelly,
back.
do you hear you?
Hey, that was so crazy. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine. We expected something to happen, and we're glad to have you back.
Yeah, we don't have any internet at all here.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you for joining us again via telephone. We really appreciate that. We were just
You're welcome.
kind of chatting a little bit about how the programs have had to adapt recently to everything that's kind of been going on. I know how much Rural Youth Services has done to try to kind of maintain their programming for youth in the various municipalities. So Shelly, we'd love to hear a little bit more on that, just in terms of how your staff has kind of adapted.
So, Shelly, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Christy. I'm wondering if I can also, there was a specific question for you in the chat, very tied to this. So talking a little bit about how you've adapted to COVID, but also specifically like they're asking if you could share a few examples of the range of activities that you've been able to keep doing, especially in the outdoor settings and Dryden
sure.
and the Ithaca Children's Garden, or more.
Absolutely. So first of all, we scrambled and trained everybody and figured out, wrapped our heads around how we could have programming virtually, which was wonderful. The staff were amazing. They're so used to working outside. They're not sitting in front of our computers, but we put our online registration system together. We trained, we brainstormed, and we had online programming starting in April and going through June until we were allowed to then do in-person programming. And so then, of course, we trained on all the safety protocols and provided in-person programming. But to back up a little bit, one of the really neat things that happened with the online programming is we were able to offer the menu to the whole entire county after we did get permission from each commission. And that was really cool because we had a countywide program and a lot of different programs where youth from all different municipalities were joining each other for these Zoom programs. We had drawing online and yoga and all kinds of crazy things. A cat in a hat program where kids just talked about their pets. It just ran the gamut. And then in the summer, we were able to hold in-person programs outside, as someone has alluded to, and those have been going really well. We have done a lot of different types of programming. There were cardboard boat building, where the cardboard boat race safely in a pond is to see whose boat could actually hold water. The kids loved that. We had obviously a lot of outdoor programming, programming around herbalism, programmings around self-care, fishing, just really run the gamut of programs. And now that it's fall, we have all many different programs happening in the fall where youth, we have one program in Danby that's actually creating a Halloween event for the people that are registered in the program and their families that will be done in 2 separate hours, but they've made a little spook walk and a photo booth and just different things so that they can celebrate the holidays safely. But it was all youth voice and youth driven. Our Trumansburg program right now is on a pause, but they have had a partnership with the Trumansburg Recreation Department and the Trumansburg schools and the town of Trumansburg to offer programming during the day for youth that are completely virtual, but without parents home and nowhere really to go with people to help them with their work. So we've been holding program at the Trumansburg Fairgrounds Monday through Thursday from 8:30 in the morning to 1:30 in the afternoon. And our program educator there has 2 assistants through the rec department, and they help them with their homework and their lessons and make sure that their schedule's straight. And then they have a variety of activities they can do when they're not doing their schoolwork. And we have youth development offerings as well as recreation offerings. So that's really exciting. And we're hoping to continue that program, but right now we're looking for an alternative location that's safe indoors, which is a big concern that I think that's what we've been doing, spending a lot of our time on the last few weeks, is finding safe places for indoor programming. Although we will be holding program outdoors as long as we can, because it is the safest place. And then we have a program that works with the Advocacy Center and Ithaca Children's Garden called Gaia Girls, and that takes place at the Ithaca Children's Garden. And I think Lynn Stack from the Advocacy Center helps out with that, and Lauren Salzman, and our DNB and our JYC programs attend that. And that gives a lot of opportunity for people to explore self-care and express themselves, build confidence, and that type of thing. I could go on for hours about all the things that we have done in this last 7 months, but I did want to touch on what Mona said and what I heard Jennifer say. Our programs really are based on the premise of building that healthy relationship with a caring adult. We have program educators who have been here for over 20 years and really build relationships with youth from the time they're in the early middle school all the way through high school, and then sometimes they come back as volunteers in college. And it's just one of the really great ways to provide youth with a protective asset is that other caring adult. And our programs also let youth explore and take risks in a safe, healthy environment.
Great. Thank you so much, Shelley. I think
You're welcome.
one of the other comments kind of put in the chat, which I think is important to kind of state, is the importance of youth to be able to learn skills while doing crafts or being outdoors, spending time with each other. That's outside of some of the traditional classroom settings that some of us might work in. So I think that's a great point. An environment where many students aren't able to be their whole selves, sometimes they are able to do so in the environments that you were describing, Shelley. So great, thank you. The next
You're
question,
welcome.
sure. The next question I had is just kind of asking us to envision what we think is needed in our community to further support youth programming. I think this is a question that comes up a lot. So I'd love to hear what people's thoughts are just in terms of maybe where we are right now in our current situation, what you would kind of ask for or what would be on your wish list to further support some of the programs that you all are running.
Well, I could go by saying one of the things that would be helpful for us, and we have seen this in a couple of communities. We generally worked with the schools and right in schools oftentimes. Obviously that can't occur right now. And so we are scrambling to find alternative locations for school when it's absolutely impossible to be outside. And this has proven easier in some locations than in others. I think because people do have concerns about building safety and others using their buildings. And then there's also the issue of air quality and having a building that has the good enough air quality. But one of the ways that we could use support is facilities, the use of facilities to continue these programs through the winter. And then just the support and recognition of how important, as I caught Jen saying when I came back on, that youth development really is, that it is the foundation. It's a foundation and not the cherry on top. And I think if people just realizing that how important, you know, our educators all the time get called babysitters or childcare, and there's nothing wrong with a babysitter or childcare, but youth development is not that. It's a professional program that has really research based and a lot of goals that help enhance a child's potential and success in the future.
Thank you. Other needs that have come up or that have been ongoing?
I'll piggyback on what Shelley was saying. I think for coming from the youth outreach standpoint, support and recognition is always needed. The community has been very good to youth outreach and the Learning Web as a whole, but as long as we can keep that support coming, I think that would be great. And we all know that, you know, the elephant in the room is funding. It's the monetary aspect. We can all use more of that to, you know, increase our services or to continue with or expand what we're doing. So.
I think we're in an interesting time because I think there's been such a recognition of the important work that we all do for youth in our community and the necessity of that, and a recognition of youth mental health needs, specifically, you know, during COVID. And so I think that the challenging thing that we're facing, I think you're right, is funding. I think we're, you know, at a point, at least for me, and gosh, I think I'm 20 years into working with youth services. This is the first time that I've seen just such a general awareness about the importance of all of the things that we do and the connection for young people and that need to have that support in order to maintain healthy social, emotional, and mental well-being. I think the challenge is that we are now just facing some crippling financial issues as we move through this. So I think it's going to be really important as we move forward to continue to support one another as agencies in the work that we do, and to help us get through the next couple of years. You know, as we were doing our budget for this year, it was very clear that this one was very difficult. We took some huge cuts, but next year is going to be even more difficult. So I think not only are we as agencies seeing that, but I also know that our school districts are as well. And so our young people are during this really challenging time where we're dealing with this scary global pandemic on top of turning on the news and you know, seeing everything that's happening in our culture and they need us more than ever. And I think people recognize that, yet we're not quite doing what we need to get there yet. So I think if we keep doing what we're doing and keep outreaching and just keep speaking loudly about our needs, hopefully we'll be able to get through the next couple of years and continue to support our young people.
Yeah, and to add on to that, letting other agencies know what we could be doing better, like letting us know what we could be doing better or how we can be more accessible, because we just live in a county that is so vastly different depending on what town. So ways that we can connect, ways that we can, show up for all of the youth throughout communities. And yeah.
That's great, Deb. And I think that really leads nicely into the kind of last question I had before we kind of open it up to our audience. And that's this idea of how we can work together. I think many of us do work together. We at least are aware of the services that are available. And we definitely have personal relationships with many different folks in many different organizations. But I think the most recent circumstances that we've all been put in, we've really realized how much we need each other, right? And how much we do need to rely on each other because we can't do everything for everyone, especially with limited resources. So I would like to hear just a little bit more on how you all think we as a community, how we as organizations, how we as parents, caregivers can work together, what potential partnerships are there to make sure that we're meeting the needs of youth and meeting the needs of maybe more youth that aren't being reached. So kind of want to open it up and to hear what your thoughts are in terms of just working together.
I'm wondering if actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to do this slightly non-consensually. Devin, would you like to start on this one? Because I know that you might have a time restriction as well. I'd love to hear from you.
On
No.
I was thinking about it. On what we can do to better connect is the question.
Yeah, or how do you generally just see programs working together better?
Yeah.
Are there improvements that could be made in terms of us working together?
Just it's so interesting in this time. So I've always appreciated things like listservs and things like this. Like I don't always know what's going on or what programs are available. So as somebody that has like several different jobs, I think probably everyone on this call probably has like several different jobs. Having some set time where I can put it on my calendar and know that I would be able to connect with other youth people.
From home, so he is coming into the office, but he is.
Great, that's great. So some set time to kind of hear from other organizations or groups and what's going on, and that sharing of information.
And I know that things like that exist, but yeah, just if there could be more drop in or something like that.
Great.
Yes, and on it, one of our attendees actually just dropped in a chat message that's probably not public, but there's going to be a youth planning task force meeting this Friday, tomorrow at 12. So anyone who works with youth can drop. So I will be sure to try to grab that link and get it out to people. But yeah, it's hard to communicate even in these times about all of those pieces.
What are other people's thoughts working together?
I think we're very fortunate in our community. We do have a lot of relationships with one another. I know that I rely heavily on folks in those relationships for when I don't know. So I think one of the biggest things that we can do is not being afraid to ask for help when we need it, and to reaching out to folks, even if there are times where I'm like, I'm not sure if you're the person who has this answer, but do you know who might? And really, making those connections as much as possible, and just, we can't do it all ourselves. And we are very fortunate to be in a county that does have a lot of great resources. And so I think as much as possible, accessing those, forming relationships with folks, and making sure we're making those connections.
Yeah, Jen, I know personally over the years you have been the go-to person. Dignity for all students. Anytime there's like a youth comes to us and says something like, school is not okay right now and I don't know how to advocate for myself. It's like, well, let's talk to Jen and see.
let's talk to Jen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and very much, I think about, many times it's a little different for me now that I'm not working directly with youth, but thinking about when, as a service specialist, I was consistently calling the Advocacy Center, calling Planned Parenthood, calling, Open Doors, different agencies to help connect my students, because I knew I wasn't the one to get them what they needed. And so I wanted to make sure I found that person who could. And so I think just, staying focused on that and on our kiddos' needs and how we access that and calling folks. And, I'll be the first one to go, I don't know, but I think if you go here, you're going to find the answer. And so I think it's important that we all, really support each other and finding the answer and finding one another.
If I'm gonna add anything to that, it would just be to piggyback on what both of you have already said, and how over the years I found that this community is probably one of the richest in resources that are out there, and that each organization or community resource is easily accessible. What I've learned over the years is sometimes it's all about who you know, and it just takes that one person to connect with. So when I look at the panel, I've had a connection with someone out of every one of your agencies. So if we're looking for a specific thing, when I say we, I'm speaking for the Learning Web as a whole, we know who to contact in that agency, or one of us knows some person that works there. And whether it's the right person or not, that everyone's willing and able to connect us to whoever is in charge of whatever services we're looking for. I'd like to see that continue. In I call it normal times, we would do outreach. We used to do a lot of street outreach, and that's just a matter of just hitting the pavement and walking through town, and you're going to run into someone that that is going to be working. You're here now. Yeah, this is what we do, and this is this. So just sharing information on a regular. It's a little bit harder now. So I depend a little bit more on the listserv, and then some of the other resources available, like the different team meetings and community organizations that we attend, like Tompkins Community Action, and the coordinated entry. And then we have everyone else, the housing task force meetings that come in and they share resources. So just having that information readily available is pretty cool.
And I would say, this is Shelley, to touch on the task force, the youth task force was created this spring in the summer so that all of agencies could kind of help each other and support each other and troubleshoot and share best practices. And that is going to continue. And the meeting is tomorrow at 12. And Bridgette, the Tompkins County Youth Services and is essential in the formation of that. So they do have the information, but I have found that to be very, very helpful in a time when there was so much uncertainty and we weren't sure, what we were going to do in the summer. We weren't sure what we're going to do in fall. What are we going to do in the winter? It's been really great to have other professionals' opinions. Everybody knows something a little different than someone else. And I've just found that to be a really helpful thing. And I'm glad that it is continuing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shelley. I think one of the key responsibilities of our department, because we are largely an administrative department, we don't provide any direct services out of the county youth service department, is that coordination of the various stakeholders who and or community partners who maybe want to talk about an issue, a need that's coming up, getting everyone together to do exactly that, share information, share best practices, troubleshoot. So if there's really anything that's coming up related to youth, in which people would benefit from that, our department is always there as a resource to kind of get those meetings and discussions off the ground. So thank you for mentioning that. It's probably the piece of our work that we enjoy doing the most. So as much as we can kind of take some of these ideas and make that information sharing better and that networking better, we're happy to take those. So Devin did have to step off. So we thank her for her time and information that she shared. I don't have any other moderator specific questions. So if folks had anything specific for any of our panelists or any more general questions, we'd love to capture them in the chat now. So I'll kind of leave that for the next minute or so to see if anyone has any other questions or comments. And obviously, Christy, jump in if you think of any questions or comments that you'd like to share.
Yeah, hi, I've been just hiding in the background here, clicking videos. Yeah, I not sure if other folks have questions. Mine is less of a question and more of just that statement of, I think the reality is that funding is going to get hard and already is hard. And oftentimes nonprofits and youth serving programs, especially, I think are consistently tasked with doing more with less. And always the times that the monies are getting cut are the times when the needs are the highest, and we are no longer, and this is not a unique situation for that. So I always appreciate folks, how do we work together? How do we support each other? And also, I have no shame in to put out into the community and world and saying this is prevention, and what is it that we can do as a community to support these programs as well, whether it's financial donations or volunteering or promoting those programs, or thinking, talking to our representatives who are designing those budgets to advocate for to not be on the chopping block, are always, that other piece of the responsibility, whether we have kids ourselves or not. These make our communities better and healthier. And so I think there is that other piece of asking and reflecting for all of us to really think about what could we be doing more, as opposed to going, well, what can I do? And say that we can actually do a lot. So that's my, send me to the lobbyist. I am fine having that discussion because we also know, and I come from the victim service side of it, and I hate to make it financial, but there is great research and great documentation that prevention costs pennies on the dollar of responding to the trauma that comes later. And whether that's through an actual criminal justice system or just the mental health and long-term impacts that come from not having that safety net, it's constantly there. But we're a really reactive society. So I think trying to shift that lens. But
I agree. I think the challenge of, I also live in the prevention world in a number of different ways, whether it's substance use or thinking about mental health and social emotional issues. And I think the challenge is that we know prevention works. We all know it because we do it and we see it work, but we also know that it often takes a really long time to be able to show the result of the work that we did. And certainly we know the younger we start sharing messages with kids, the more that we continue to reinforce them throughout their youth, the more successful we're going to be. I think sometimes that becomes challenging because we do have this reactive society of rather than being proactive, we're reactive. And it's difficult because we can't always show there's not always an immediate result or an immediate change to something, even though we know we're making an impact. We don't always have the data to back that up, which sometimes makes that getting that funding even more challenging. because they want to say, I just did a report for Oasis, and they want to be able to show all of these things. And I'm like, they're in kindergarten. We're going to see the result of these things, kindergarten through 12th grade. We're going to see that result when they get older. So I think that's another challenge we face when we live in the world of prevention and trying to be proactive versus reactive, is there isn't always that concrete data that funders love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a great comment in the chat, which might be a beautiful way to wrap up kind of 2 days talking about youth well-being and safety. Someone says it's always great working with the other agencies, and yes, as Mona said, we need to recognize our teens more for all the work they do, and in that piece that rescue teens, and they don't need to be rescued, and they don't want to be rescued, and they are doing a tremendous amount of work and advocacy for themselves, often with much greater barriers than we as kind of professionals and roles have. And so I think that's the other piece, is how do we uplift the work that our youth are doing, and honor that and value that and support them when we can, and also get out of their way when we need to, because they're the ones who also will kind of shape the landscape of where we need to go, because they're the ones that are and who are we listening to. And so I think that's also a really powerful piece for us to be thinking about as we're thinking about our programs.
I think that's such an essential piece. I mean, our young people are so amazing, and they're the experts in their lives. And oftentimes, we, with all of the best intentions, roll in thinking that we're going to support them, and we don't really provide them with what they need. And so I think for those of us in the field, I think one of the key things sometimes for us is to just be quiet. And to hear what they're saying, and support them and lift them up and empower them and provide them with what they need, based on what they're telling us, other than, like what we assume it is that they need.
I think that's a great way to kind of close. I think we've really touched, in this panel alone, we've touched on all the themes that have kind of been brought through the series of workshops that we've hosted through this conference. How do we protect youth? How do we protect them? By providing them with the healthy connections that they need. And how do we empower them as they grow up to make decisions that are safe? Right? So those have kind of been the themes, and I think you've all done a beautiful job of highlighting how each of your individual programs does that in unique ways. So I think we would definitely, if it's okay with you all, like to share just kind of maybe your name and email addresses with the folks that have joined this, just in case they had any other questions about your programs or the services that you all provide. I think we will definitely be sharing the recording of this as well as the other sessions with everyone that had registered, just in case folks didn't have a chance to hear them. And we will be getting out evaluations on all of the sessions and the conference as a whole in a couple of days. And I think that's really it in terms of wrapping up. Did anyone have any closing thoughts or anything that they would like to state before we wrap up for the day?
No, I just echo my same thank you and appreciation for everybody attending, and our panelists for taking the time, because I know that you have a lot going on as well. So thank you for your work and for taking the time to share it with us.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for attending and all of your great comments and questions. I hope everyone has a good rest of the day. And if you are doing anything safe for Halloween, that you do it safely and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.